song, y'all. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt not have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the Sabbath day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Hallelujah.
Abba Yahuwah, we come before you this very day, this Shabbat that you created for us. This day that you have set aside, that we just keep our minds stayed on you. The day that you have said that nothing matters other than you. Abba, we're here because we want to make you happy. We want to make you smile. We want to make you be joyous with us. Please accept our praise. Please accept our help us with our understanding to clear out those things from us that just distract us from you, but open up our hearts to where we can just receive more of you. Each week, each day, each house in here, Abba, has gone through something this week, something that tried to discourage them, something that tried to cause them to want to break free, something that caused them to want to just second guess things at times. But we know these things only come because you have willed it to come. Nothing happens by chance. You allow those things to come to test us and to strengthen us within your ruach, to strengthen our ruachs with what you have given us. You didn't put us here to be weak, but you put us here to be strong. You told us to be strong and be courageous. Abba, we are here for you. Though the world can't stand you, the world hates who you are, the world hates the truth of who you are, and they would rather deal with the lie, they would rather deal with the deceit, they would rather deal with the traditions that have kept them in the closet, because they figure if they don't have to see the sin, if they don't have to see the error, that they don't have to face it. But Abba, just because we don't see that error doesn't mean we're not going to face that judgment. We know that you are fair and that all things come through you, Abba. You introduce us to people to send your word. You introduce us to people to be shining lights into this world of darkness. Abba, continue to shine your light within us, that we may be able to continue to shine the light through others, for others to see you. Just as it happened this week, Abba, how you opened up the door for a word to be spoken, not just to one, not just to two, but to everybody who walked up and listened. I pray, Abba, that at least one person took away that thing that you was trying to get them to understand and see, to cause them to reflect on their lives, to honestly decide whether they want to take the red pill and wake up, or keep the blue pill and stay asleep. Abba, you are wonderful and you are perfect in all your ways. Perfect us in you. Perfect our hearts, our minds, our thoughts, our speech, our sight, our hearing as you do. Help us to continue to cause ourselves to look upon ourselves, so that we can recognize the wrong that we have had in the past, so that we can help others to accomplish things, that to pass through those areas where we have already succeeded. us not to judge because we made it, but to be compassionate because we made it, to be loving because we made it, to be long-suffering because we made it, because we couldn't have made it without you. Help us not to be judges against your people, but to be leaders for your people, to walk upright that they have something to follow. We thank you for the word that you've given us for today. We know that it's going to nourish us. We know that it's going to strengthen us even further in your will and not our own. But help us to walk upright at all times. Help us to examine ourselves every time we look in the mirror, every time we do anything. Help us to question whether this is how you would handle these things. We bless and we praise your holy name, your set apart name that means so much. But yet a lot of times we give it so little. Increase in us, create in us, Abba Yahuwah, a new heart. Help us to become contrite. Yes, it may hurt, but Abba, we desire to serve you. We thank you for all your blessings. We thank you for your mercy, and we pray that you will find grace. This we pray in the mighty name of Yahushua Mashiach. Hallelujah.
All praises. Well, shalom, y'all. How y'all doing? Man, it's good to see y'all. Miss the faces that ain't here today. Hope y'all doing well out there. Yeah, it's been a minute. It seemed like it's been forever since we've been here. Yeah, or is it 2 or 3? Man, don't it? Like, it seemed like it was forever, man. But all praises. Yeah, we'll jump back in where we left off. We are in chapter 9. Man, like, yeah, chapter 9. So, a brief overview of chapter 9. Now, if y'all are paying attention, right, what we're doing throughout this series is we are developing a biblical worldview, right? We developing a biblical worldview. So, as we continue to go through these studies, just keep that in mind, right? So, excuse me. Chapter 9. So, what's going on in chapter 9? And did anything stand out to you in chapter 9? Hey, no, all praises. It's right there. Yeah, all praises. So, Elohim restores the post-Eden natural order in the earth, right? So this is Noah now coming off of the ark, right? Now that he's coming off of the ark, we're going to see that he's going to have a conversation with the Father, and it's going to kind of dictate the way things are going to go in the earth from that point forward, okay? So Elohim makes a covenant with Noah and creation, right? The rainbow is given as a sign of that covenant. Noah becomes drunken with wine, and his son Ham in some way disrespects his father. We're going to dig into that. And then the son of Ham, which is Canaan, is the one that's cursed. Okay? So, like I said, we're going to dig into that. But I'm going to use chapter 9 I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to question more in general how to deal with some of the more obscure text, right? Because once we get to those last 2 points, things in the text start to get a little bit obscure, meaning it leaves a lot of room for interpretation, a lot of room for the imagination. We don't have all the details of what's going on in this story, at least according to the biblical text. Right? So, like I said, I wanted to use this as an opportunity to question more in general how to deal with some of the more obscure texts. How faithful are we to the text, right? Because this is really what is the essence of it, is how faithful are we willing to be to what the text presents itself as? How much are we going to fill in the gaps with, like I said, our imagination or whatever else the case might be? And then by staying faithful to the text, what I mean is the literal text, the context, the culture, the history, right? And then when it comes to us, this is when it comes to us forming our theological conclusions, right? So what do we believe about Elohim? Okay. So then how much are we willing to lean into our own understanding, opinions, feelings, curiosities, imagination, emotions, and so on and so forth to fill in the gaps? And is it okay for us to just say sometimes, I don't know, right? If the text only goes so far, is it okay for us to say, hey, this is what we do know, but this part right here, hey, I just don't know. I don't know. Could be, could not be. I don't know, right? Is that okay, right? So, the reestablishment of the natural order. Genesis chapter 9 begins. Y'all gonna have to excuse me because I'm still recovering from some things. And that's a whole nother story and a testimony for another day. But all praises. Genesis chapter 9 begins with Elohim reestablishing natural order in the land. And it's a callback to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 through 31. All right. So Genesis chapter 9, starting at verse 1, it says, and Elohim blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and increase or multiply and fill the earth. Right? So like I said, this is a callback to Genesis chapter 1. We've heard this before. Verse 2, it says, and the fear of you and the dread of you is on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the heavens, on all that creeps on the ground, and on all of the fish of the sea. Into your hand they have been given. Every creeping creature that lives is food for you. I have given you all as I gave the green plants. All right. So far, so good, right? Nothing too complicated, right? Right? Okay, all praises. So what do we have here? The blessing upon mankind to be fruitful and multiply is given. Now compare that to Genesis 1 and 28. Okay, and I'm going to read Genesis 1 and 28 through 31 here in a second. But just, again, for your own reference, compare that line to that line when it was originally given, okay? There is now a fear and a dread that the animals have for mankind. Okay, so now compare that to Genesis 7 and 15. Now, Genesis 7 and 15 is when the animals came into the ark, right? And they just came into the ark, right? So, and then on the ark, it had to be some kind of peace and shalom that was taking place that might have, let's say, resembled what was going on in the garden, right? But then when you see now that they're coming off of the ark and the Most High is having this conversation with Noah, and he's letting him know, hey, yo, from here on, you know that those animals is going to be different than it was on that ark, right? And then also compare that to Genesis 2 and 19, right? Genesis 2 and 19 is where we're dealing with all the animals were presented before Adam, and it doesn't seem that they have any kind of fear for Adam. They're all presented before him. He names all of them, right? And then you can even throw in there, if you want to, the allusion to, well, if this serpent is now talking to Eve in the garden, why is there no fear there, or she's not afraid of what's going on here, right? So some might say, because the animals and mankind, while they was in the garden, they didn't have that kind of relationship. It wasn't a fear-based relationship, right? But now we see things are a little bit different. He's saying, hey, they don't have a fear and a dread for you, right? Go ahead.
Salakia. But I want to say it's in Jasher chapter 6, when the animals were coming into the ark, they had no fear of Noah. They literally, according to Joshua chapter 6, the animals bowed down, the ones that were going onto the ark, they bowed down before him in order to enter into the ark. So at that particular point, like you said, there is no fear of the animals and man, because the Most High has removed that fear, because it's not a it's a right now they have to be symbiotic. They have to learn how to live together and be able to survive together.
All praises. So, all praises. I'm down here, so it's hard for me to see because I'm like a couple inches lower.
And I can't remember if it's in the book of Jasher, where it talks about the animals that went into the ark. And from their description of it is that they were not full-grown animals that went into the ark. They were basically baby animals that went into the ark at that time. And if I should ask you, what is the common denominator between all mammals? Does anybody would know? The common denominator of all mammals?
I'm about to say
Exactly.
the fact that they got to have milk.
They drink milk, exactly. So all you needed on the ark in order to feed them was cows that would give them milk to eat, because most of them at that particular time were not carnivorous at all. So this would be the temperament that they would need to have being on that boat, confined for that, for those 40 days and 40 nights. And as I was reading this, I said, well, that makes sense. You have plenty room for them. You wouldn't have to stock a lot of feed for them because they're not carnivorous, and all mammals survive on milk. Even grown mammals can survive on milk. So as you read the scriptures, you'll find in some scriptures that will be more detailed about certain situations that occurred during that time period that you would not know by just reading, straight out of the King James Version, things of that nature. So, in doing your studying and trying to get some understanding, there are other books that will elaborate on certain events and what actually happened to those events that occurred during that time period. And it just kind of makes sense. I mean, baby elephants, you can put 5 or 6 or 7 on there, you know what I mean, and have plenty of room, instead of trying to put 7 grown elephants on there, or 7 grown tigers, on there, because it just makes sense, that way the nature of the animals will be calm. You won't have that hostility between each animal and things of that nature. So, like I said, there are some other books that you have to go to in order to get a deeper understanding what actually occurred during that time period.
Yeah, all praises. I believe what you're referring to, I think it's in Jasher, where it talks about how the mother lion brought cubs, if you will, and then he took a male and a female of the cubs onto the ark. I think that will be what you would be referring to. Neither here nor there. Like I said, for me, we'll dig into it a little bit more. The essence of the conversation that he's having with Noah is, hey, you just keep in mind that now that you offer this ark, you ain't gonna be in Kansas no more, right? Like, walk up on one of these animals, walk up on one of them now, and after, don't get it twisted and think just because this animal was on this ark, you can go back to this lion next year and it's not gonna do something to you, or you know what I mean? Like, there's a natural order that's now being reestablished, okay? So, there's a type of dominion, okay? So there's a type of dominion that mankind will now have over these animals, right? Like he said in verse 2, into your hand they have been given, right? But it's, again, we're doing a callback to Genesis 1:27, through 31. So what I want us to start doing is we're going to start comparing the differences between the Genesis 1 account and now that things are getting reestablished. How is this similar, but how is this different from how it was when it was originally said? Okay. So like I said, they'll have a dominion that's over them. Compare that to Genesis 1:28 and 29. And then mankind is permitted to eat meat in the same way that they were permitted to eat the vegetation of the earth. Now compare that to Genesis 1:29 through Genesis 1:30. Okay? Because this is what this is a callback to. All right. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna read Genesis 1 and 26. I'm gonna start at 26 and I'm gonna read through to 31. All right. So Genesis or Bereshiyt 1 and 26, it says that Elohim said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping things, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the ground." And Elohim created man in his image, and in the image of Elohim he created him, male and female he created them. And Elohim blessed them, and Elohim said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply," or be fruitful and increase. Same thing what he's telling to Noah and his sons. "And fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over all the creeping creatures of the earth." And Elohim said, "See, I have given you every plant that yields seed which is on the face of the earth. Every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it is for food." So now, what did he tell them in Genesis 1? The fruit of this vegetation, that's what's for food for you, okay? So now we're going to continue, right? Verse 30, it says, "And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to every creeping creature on the earth in which there is a living soul, every green plant is for food." So now what was that? The supposed to be the food for the animals. So we don't get the idea that there was carnivores in the garden, right? But then now what we're seeing is in Genesis 9, there's a difference there, right? What is he saying? He said, "Hey, I'm giving you these animals now, you can eat them." So there's a difference there that's happening. And then, like I said, it's a callback. The callback is, like he said, the same way that I gave you all of the green plants, now I'm also throwing meat on that menu, right? So it says, "And Elohim saw all that he had made, and see, it was very good. And there came to be evening, came to be morning the sixth day." All right. So we can see that there's some similarities, but there are some differences, right? And I'm gonna dig into why I'm pointing that out. All right. So, like I said, notice there are similarities and differences between the two beginnings. In Genesis 1, man is created in the image and likeness of Elohim, and blessed with the same blessing to be fruitful and multiply. In the Genesis 1 account, the blessing included mankind's dominion over all of the animals of the earth. So in the Eden scenario, however, there is not mentioned anything about a fear and a dread, right? We don't get anything about a fear and a dread between the animals and mankind in Eden, but we ain't in Eden no more, right? And then, nor were the animals given to be a prey to be mankind, but instead, we see that the vegetation was said to be given to both mankind and the animals alike, all right, for food. So here in Genesis 9, we see that the animals are given for the man, but now it seems that there will be a fear and a dread, right? And although they can be eaten. All right, so in the next slide, we will see that there is a stipulation, but for now, I just want us to compare and contrast the differences. Notice that there was one type of dominion that was given to mankind in the garden, and when mankind was still in the image and likeness of Elohim, and then we're going to notice that now that they've come out, there's still a dominion, but it's a different kind of thing going on, right? So we good so far. All right, all praises. So Excuse me. So remember, I asked a question. I said, how faithful am I to what the word is saying, right? And especially when we're dealing with matters that are obscure or things like that, right? So in the intelligence community, they say, well, they break things down into 3 categories, right? In terms of intelligence, they say, well, we have our known knowns, right? The things we know, right? Then they say we have the known unknowns, the things we know we don't know, right? Then we have unknown unknowns, the things we don't know that we don't know, right? And you, as the believer, I'm saying you have to operate knowing the answers to all 3 of those things, right? There are some things that, hey, yo, we just know, right? You can't convince me that I can eat a pork chop because I know what the word says on this matter. It is very clear, right? This is a known. No, I know what it says, and that's not even up for debate. But then you have known unknowns. This is where we're dealing with obscure text, right? Mysteries within the text, right? Where it's like, we know so much about this, but we know so little about it, right? Like, there's some things when we're talking about the kingdom coming, where it's like we have glimpses, we have shadows, we see through this glass starkly, and it's like, yeah, we got some of the framework to how things are gonna go, but it's a lot of details to that we just don't know, right? Well, what is the wilderness gonna look like, and how are we gonna get there? And it's all of the, we know the gathering of Israel from the 4 corners has to take place. We know that. But then there's details to how this whole thing is going to happen, where it's like the best we can do is try to put the pieces together as best as we can. But a lot of it is speculation because it's a lot of things with that process that time has to reveal. We just don't know, right? And then we have things that are unknown unknowns. There are some things about how things are going to be in the kingdom and whatever it means, like Shaul said, or I believe that's in John. When he's like, listen, whatever we're going to be in that day, all I can say is we're going to be transformed. And whatever I can't tell you exactly all the details of what that is going to be and what that's going to be like and how the kingdom is going to be ran. And will I remember everybody? Or I think I will, I think I won't. It's a lot of questions and a lot of theories and doctrines when we're talking about after the resurrection that is like, these are just unknown unknowns. We don't know what it's going to be like. And then there's so many things that we don't know, and we don't even know to ask the question because we just don't know that we don't even know it, right? So it's so many things, right? So you have to understand that as a believer, and especially in this dispensation of time, you got to be aware of that, hey, yo, there are some things that we do know, and that for those things, the known knowns, I am okay with drawing a line in the sand and saying, no, I can't rock with you on that one, right? But then there are some things, like I said, that are known unknowns, and it's like, okay, well, if that's where you're going with that one, I don't know, I guess we'll see. And then you got, like I said, the unknown unknowns. So now, my question for you is how faithful am I to what the word says, right? It's not so much of us dealing with the known knowns, right? If you know, you know. But the question and where things get, the waters get muddied a little bit is when we're dealing with the unknowns, right? How faithful am I going to stand on what the word says when I'm dealing with an unknown? Is it okay, like I said, for me to just say sometimes, I don't know, right? And instead of me leaning on my own understanding or someone else's understanding or whatever, sometimes it's okay for me to just say, hey, I don't know. And I guess we'll find time will reveal it. And when the Father and his Ruach reveals that, that's when we'll know. But until then, move in what I know, right? But what I find is that so often we are uncomfortable giving that answer. And we're uncomfortable just saying, hey, that I don't know. We don't know. right? So Genesis 9:3, it says, every creeping creature that lives is food for you. I have given you all as I gave the green plants. Genesis 1:29 says, and Elohim says, see, I have given you every green plant that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it is for food, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to every creeping creature on the earth, in which there is a living being, every green plant is for food, and it came to be so. So, like I said, we can compare and contrast this, and there's some similarities, but there's some differences, right? One is talking about plants only, and then one is talking about plants and animals, right? So, again, how faithful am I to what the word says? Has anybody ever, I'm going to preface it, this whole part of this with this. There are some Hebrews within our movement that believe for religious purposes, right? Not necessarily just health purposes, but for religious purposes, that meat is a no-go, right? We went to Atlanta, and we just so happened we was looking for a vegan restaurant. We found a vegan restaurant, and the vegan restaurant just happened to be Hebrew owned, like Israelite owned, and I think that they have connections to the community that's over in Israel, that's over in Dimona, right? And they're all vegan and plant-based over there, right? No knock on that. I have no issues with that. But the thing that's interesting about it is, like I said, we have within the Israelite walk that there is a doctrine out there that says we don't eat meat, and here's the reasons based on Torah why we don't, right? So that's kind of where I'm going. So one might hold the opinion eating meat is wrong and technically sinful because it was not Elohim's original intent for man to eat meat. Has anybody ever heard that argument before? Right? So so they're not pulling that out of a hat. Like I said, we can look at Genesis 1:29 and 1:30, and where it says to all of the even the animals, he gave them the plants and the vegetation. There doesn't seem to be any kind of carnivorous or even omnivorous activity happening in Genesis 1, right? Okay. So the question is, what issue does this point of view lend itself when we are dealing with the text in totality? If I'm going to say, first off, let me ask the question, what is sin? So we all know it, right? 1 John chapter 3. He explains it as best as anybody can, right? Sin is transgression of the law, right? So, but like I said, one might hold the opinion that eating meat is wrong and is technically sinful because this was not Elohim's original intent. So what do we do with that, right? So Isaiah 11:6, because they might also use this as a proof or a precept to that point of view, right? So they'll say, hey, Isaiah 11:6, and a wolf, this is talking about Mashiach is on Mount Zion, right? And we're talking about in that day, right? And we know what they mean when they say that day, right? And a wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and a leopard lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child leads them, right? And a cow and bear shall feed, their young ones lie down together, and a lion eat straw like an ox, right? And the nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the adder's den. They do no evil, nor nor destroy in all my set apart mountain, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of Yahuwah, and the waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse or Yishai, standing as a banner to the people. Unto him all the nations shall seek, and his rest shall be esteemed. So again, like I said, we following and we tracking this train of thought, right? Of just saying that, hey, one might hold this opinion, right? Another, however, might hold the opinion, well, eating meat is not sinful or wrong because Elohim permits it in several places in the word, and when done according to the word, it is not presented as wrong or sin. I trust that if the Father thought it were wrong, he would have said it for himself and wouldn't have given us permission. So how many of us have heard that point of view, right? Where I'm going to speak for myself. I eat meat and vegetables, right? So I'm going to lay that out there right now. That's where I'm at with it, right? As far as I'm not one that believes that eating meat is a sin because I believe that sin is transgression of the Torah. And so thereby, if I can find in the Torah where he permits it, how can I say that it's a transgression of his Torah? So y'all see where I'm going with this, right?
But there's two different circumstances here.
Let's get you in the mic.
But there's two different circumstances here. The previous one, there was no sin in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have the option of eating meat or just vegetables because everything that was ordained during that time was holy and unto the Most High. But once sin entered the world, that changed the whole dynamics of a lot of things. So now you have laws put in place and other things of that nature that we had to abide by. Not only us, but even animals had to. So you're talking about two different situations that occurred right after each other. So you have to be able to distinguish what was it that we were ordained to prior to sin being brought into the world. You know, so you can't keep this. You can't keep the same ideology on both of these issues at both of these times because the issues has changed. The whole dynamics has changed once sin had entered the world.
All praises. So what we're seeing is I'm a pause and I'm gonna wait until I get to that point. But excellent point, Elder. Excellent point. Like when it comes to us looking at the Torah, like I said, we have to get in the habit of taking it in its totality, in its context, in its the historical. We have to take all of these things into account before we can come to a conclusion, because otherwise we might have the cart pulling the horse instead of the horse pulling the cart, right? Sometimes we have an idea that we already believe, and then we might go in to start to look for ways that the Torah can explain our feeling or our belief that we already have, right? But that's not the way that it's supposed to work. The way that it's supposed to work is we're supposed to say, okay, here's the Torah, and then let me start to shape what I believe according to that, right? Even if I disagree with it personally, I have to set my feelings to the side and say, hey, well, this is how I personally feel about this topic, but this is what the Torah says, right? And what I find is that oftentimes, not only will people not say, I don't know when it's something that's obscure, but people will also give their opinion and represent it as though this is what the Father is saying, right? And that's where things can get hairy and it can be problematic, right? So, like I said, this whole lesson here is what I'm really going to use it as is an opportunity to challenge to say, okay, so what we have to learn how to be is disciplined with the text, responsible, and not only responsible, but it's just like what he said, rightly divide the word of truth, right? That's the thing. And you have to have that principle, like I said, when you're dealing with the word, just as a whole. And if you can do that, then what you position yourself in a place to where when you come across or you interact with someone who might not necessarily be using that as their foundation when dealing with the word, you can reason with them, right? This is all about us learning how to become mature. When we going back to what we originally said, the difference between exegesis and an eisegesis, right? How can we become mature, just mature with dealing with his word, right? We want to make sure that we properly represent it. So, okay, so some questions. So which one of these 2 points of view has a more complete view of the text? The one that says, well, the original intent was that we don't eat meat, and so we got to go back to that, right? And so that means that, hey, if you eating meat, that's a sin, right? That's where that point of view becomes problematic. And not so much so if you're saying, hey, I only want to be, I'm just want to go back to that. I have no issue with that because it's not a sin to be a vegan only. That's not a sin. It's nowhere where he tells you must eat meat, right? Except for the Pesach, and that is what that is. But outside of that, you won't find where it's a requirement for you to abstain from it or not abstain from it, right? So which one of these 2 points of view has the more complete view of the text? Can we all agree that it would be the second one, right? It says, hey, no, I eat the meat because, did you have something, Michael? Okay, all praises. Excuse me. We can all agree it would be the second point of view, right? So then the question becomes, how do we reconcile these two positions, right? And I kind of just dug into it a little bit, right? The way that we reconcile this, because imagine we can have this as an assembly, which is, again, like I said, what the greater purpose of what this lesson is so how do we deal with one another when we come to these differences in belief, right? How do we reconcile these two? Because one is saying, hey, this is a sin. The other person is saying that it's not. Well, the way that we reconcile it is we got to go back to what the word says and we got to define, okay, well, what is sin, right? Now, once we've done that, and we can say, hey, well, sin is transgression of his Torah, and it says right here in his Torah that we can, and then it gives us details on how we can do it, right? So if this is what the Torah says, and I'm not violating what it says, then that means that what? I'm not in sin. It's just, so it's not a matter of right or wrong, right? It becomes a matter of what? Yeah, somebody's opinion, right? What's my personal opinion or my personal preference?
It seems as though that there's some discrepancy between statutes and laws.
For sure. For sure. Which, excuse me, if I went back a couple lessons, right, we touched on that a little bit, right, that there is a difference between laws, statutes, commands, judgments, right? What is the differences between all of these things? Because you have some that are dealing specifically with the known knowns. This is a flat out command. You either don't do this or do this, right? But then you have some that are, it's a statute or a right ruling, right? They're saying, hey, when this is done, this is how this needs to be dealt with, right? So you have all kinds of, there's differences within, if you choose to eat meat, there's a right way to eat meat and there's a wrong way to eat meat. And all meats ain't good meat, right? So, like, it's not just a blanket statement as a whole, and we're going to deal with that, right? I'm getting ahead of myself. And then, like I said, if we can conclude that these 2 points of view are not a matter of sin or wrongdoing, then what is the matter truly dealing with? Like I said, it's really just a matter of opinion at that point. The issue is that, like I said, you have to know you for yourself as the believer. What are my known knowns? What are my known unknowns? And what are my unknown unknowns when dealing with the text, right? Do I know myself well enough to know, hey, no, that's not the Most High. That's not his Ruach, right? Because his Ruach is not going to contradict something that's in his word. If his word says that I can eat meat, then it might not necessarily be as a whole. Now he might be leading you you in particular, as an individual on a personal level, abstain from that. And that he might have his reasons or things he might see. That's not good for your health. I need you to get some things together for you and your health right now, or some self-control things, or whatever the case might be. He has his reasons for that, and that's on a personal level between you and the Most High. Definitely listen to that if that's what he's instructing you for that season, for that time, what have you, right? But the issue comes in there, like I said, a lot of times we don't know. We'll blur the lines, and then we'll put the Father's name on top of our opinion to justify our opinion, and that's when it becomes problematic, right? And then that comes into an assembly, and now you have these two voices in the assembly, and now we got discord and dissension within the assembly, right? And we can't have that. So this is how this thing works, and this is, like I said, this is why we're going over the way that we're going over it, so that we can learn how to be responsible with the text and to know what where our limitations are with the text, right? Nadavia.
I was just going to say that's normally what happens. There's no clarification. Like when you are given your view on the reasons why you do things, usually it's just that and that's it. There's no, well, this is, what I don't want to even say that because people use that too. This is what I received from, and this is why, like, you have to be careful with that too. Like, no, just strictly sticking to what you have here. What Abihu has said, I've given you meat just like I have given you green plants. So most times, like you're saying, usually there's an opinion of the reasons why I don't eat meat because they mess with the animals and they do this, that, even though it's the same with the vegetables. But they'll give all of, those reasons, which, like you said, teach, that's what you believe in. But the issue is there's normally just stops there and there's no, but the word does say that, this is the scriptures here that says that you can do meat, and vegetables. It's usually that's subtract from the whole situations, which is why you have people come, you just hear them teach, and then it's just like, they'll just blurt out their opinions, and then it stops right there. There's no scriptures, nothing else backing up what, no scriptures along with it. So, yeah, I would just say, got to have that clarification. There's like I said before, a very fine line of like your opinion versus like what Abihu thus said Yahuwah. There's a fine line. You just have to make sure you clarify. If you're doing this for whatever reason, that's your reason, but Abihu does say this. Just clarification is very important.
All praises.
And you also can use, there's other verses in the scriptures that will help justify or solidify what you think. Just like when you gave your tithes to the priest, everything that went into the storehouse, whether it be, vegetables or things of that nature, or animals, they are put there for the widows and for kids. So, right there it lets you know that some things are permissible. I mean, if the priests are taking this in order to feed the widows and the kids, so there's some there's some justifiable things here in the scripture that let you know that this is okay to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So.
Mm-hmm. I was just saying that with the high priest, Abihu gave that Levitical. This is y'all inheritance. Y'all over here with me. Let me get my portion, and then y'all get y'all portion. Mm-hmm. And it was of the offerings.
Mm-hmm. All praises. So, point 4: we can only understand how to appropriately deal with one another after answering these questions when dealing with differences in doctrinal belief, right? Because as long as we stay with these 2 points of view and we don't understand that this is really not a matter of sin or what the word says, but a matter of just how we feel about it and how we choose to have our personal walk, then this is where it becomes, again, we're not building a kingdom, we just building a religion, and then it's this doctrine over here and it's this doctrine over here, and we're going to split because we can't see eye to eye on this doctrine. Right, and that's not the way that it's supposed to be. Not when we're talking about a matter like this, right? Absolutely. So now, there's another underlying issue that's here, and I'm doing a little bit of foreshadowing because we're gonna have to deal with more topics like this at a later point. Okay, but the issue here really lies in what they call like these arguments of the Father's original intent, right? Those are problematic arguments. They're always going to cause you issues because with that usually comes some sort of taken away from other things that have already been written, right? And that's where it becomes an issue, right? So, like I said, I don't want to say too much on that topic, but we're doing some foreshadowing. We're going to touch more on topics like this as we continue to go throughout the book of Genesis. But the question, like I said, that you have to be able to answer is how faithful am I to what the word actually says, and how much of it is just I'm looking for the word to support an idea or a belief that I already have, and I'm a cherry pick out of the word the things that just line up with that, right? That's where if that's what you're doing, you got free will. Hey, that's what it is, and go ahead. But just understand that it is problematic, right? Just understand that it is very problematic if we're talking about dealing with the text as a whole. My goal is to get to the point to where we can all look in the mirror, we know what our limitations are, right? And we know where our struggles are. And then from there, now I'm in a position to make a decision to say, all right, well, Father, help me on this, or I'm going to continue to be stuck in my ways and I'm going to do it my way. That's as far up the mountain I can go, right? That's for you to know, but at least you should know it, right? So moving on. Again, how faithful am I to what the word says? So Elohim permits the eating of meat, but not without conditions, right? So there are some conditions to how you're supposed to be able to eat this meat and how you're not, right? 9:3, it says, every creeping creature that lives is food for you. Now, every so if a vulture, I can see a vulture eating another dead animal, and then I can come up and grab the vulture and I can eat that. Is that okay for me? Right? Okay, all praises. So we're going to see, again, we see how there has to be some sort of totality when we're dealing with the word, because otherwise we can come up with doctrines that are not in alignment with what the Father is saying as a whole, right?
He said, you have to believe every word of the scripture, not just certain parts or certain individual parts that you want to stand on. Mm-hmm. He says the scriptures is meat for, I don't want to put this. You have to understand the whole scripture and not just single parts that you want to use in order to solidify what you think. Because you can't sit here and say that, you can eat any meats. It says you can eat any meats, and then you go down later on in the scripture and it says, well, these are the only meats that you can eat, right? There we go. So you have to adapt to what the scriptures are telling you as you grow in your understanding, because if you're going to sit there and say, well, it says you can eat any meats, so that means I can eat any meats. Mm-hmm. You're wrong. You're only taking one part of the scripture and to try to justify what you wanted to justify.
There we go. So, okay, we're going to go I grind and then Zakane.
So I'm going to go back like one step. For those who are saying, well, you're not supposed to eat meat at all, but it's weird because you can find it in not only Leviticus, but you see it in Deuteronomy also. But then that begs the question, did Yeshua cause people to sin when he handed out fish? That's a problem. That's a huge problem right there. That should knock it all down right there. Mm-hmm. So, did I open up the can?
No.
But not only that, all right, because I know sis want to add something to it, but for those who may be confused about 9 and 3, how would you, for a person who don't understand, because I know how we'll see it, mm-hmm. but for those who may not have that same understanding, how would you explain that to them using the Hebrew words in that verse?
All praises. So we'll touch on how we deal with that, right? How do we deal with that in this sort of scenario going forward? I'm glad that you asked that though, because that's really what the question is. And like I keep saying, that the issue with all of these doctrines and with all of these things that pop up out of this is what happens is we will set the word to the side to say what? Well, the Father's heart originally was. His original intent was, and then when we do that, it's problematic because we have to put away the words that he actually said. That's where it becomes an issue, right? If we are okay with just accepting the word as it is, we'll be all right. And we can, like Elder said, there's many places that we can go to show and to walk through this. And we're going to walk through it dealing with this because like I said, we'll walk through it. Okay, so next was Zakane. We're going to go to Zakane, then Nadavia, then Allison, Sister Allison. Okay.
All right. No, actually, I just want to land back just a little bit off of Elder and Ryan. But I don't think you're going. I'm pretty sure you're going to go there. But when you look at that, they got to take it in context. That's not the whole scripture. You got to go in just a little bit deeper than that, because when you find out that what was sacrificed after this was given out, after this order was given. That right there shows you that even then there was a law of clean and unclean.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So while people say, well, we was giving us that we can eat anything, no, you got to remember that even at that particular point, the Most High made it clear that Noah only sacrificed clean animals.
Mm-hmm. All praises. So let's go to Nadavia, and then we're going to go to Sister Allison, and then we're going to move on.
I just wanted to add, when you were saying Yahusha did the fish, what was their food in the wilderness? Manna and quail, that whole period. So that's just another example. So again, like if someone were to say, oh, well, Yahuwah didn't operate in that way, we do have examples that he does provide, his people with certain meats.
Mm-hmm. All praises.
I was just having this conversation with my oldest son, and it wasn't even a conversation. We're kind of going back and forth because I know that in biblically we could eat meat, so he's trying to take it to where he wants his kids to eat drink shakes. And one of them's a diabetic, and that, and that's supposed to be, sustainable. And I'm like, we ate meat, and so the fish thing just got brought up with Christ. That just got brought up. So he said when he broke bread and he passed out the fish, did he eat it? And another time came up where, where did it say that he ate meat? Because I'm like, I thought Christ ate lamb, and he was like, it don't say that, That's what I thought. Yeah, he was like, he said, because he was like, no, he didn't eat meat. He was like, I guess if everybody else ate meat, he was like, did he eat the fish? And I'm like, did he eat the fish? Because I don't remember seeing did he eat the fish. He was saying it like, and then the thing with the blood, the wine. He was saying, I said, well, they called him a wine bibber because of his eyes in the wine, and he was saying what he was drinking was not actual wine, it was like something to detoxing. So
yeah, all of those are arguments, modern arguments that are that take the actual context of what those verses are about. It takes them out of that context, right? Like, to the ancient reader, no ancient reader is assuming that the drink that he's talking about is detoxing drink. That's a modern argument or something that will come from a modern point of view. But in ancient times, they would look at it as exactly what it was. It was wine. You know, he drank wine. But yeah, that's how they would look at it. But,
So no, yeah, you good, Ox. So the thing is, even if Yeshua didn't eat the fish, did he set other people up
for sin, right.
for sin?
If he wasn't okay with it, why would he?
That's a big problem. But
So
what I'm saying is, if eating meat was a problem or a sin, he wouldn't have gave it to them. That's why I said that he set them up to be in a situation, right?
So exactly. So like that's the thing, and what happens a lot of times is arguments like that are associated with those same arguments as like what I'm saying about these arguments of, well, Yah's original intent, and then I got to cut things out of the word to justify that point of view. People use the same thing with Mashiach. They'll say, well, I only do what I can see that Mashiach did, right? But not really realizing that that's even taking things out of context, because the purpose of these writers is to focus on very specific things in this text. It's not for them to write down everything that he did and everything that he did not do and to fully represent that, right? So just because something is silent in the text doesn't necessarily mean that he did or that he didn't. It just means that it's one of those things that we can say, hey, well, I don't know. Right? Like, it's just one of those things. But people won't do that, and instead they'll make assumptions to say that I'm gonna leave that one alone. But yeah, people will make assumptions based off of that. All praises. Go ahead.
So then you go to Genesis 18 and you see Abraham, starting at verse 7. I'm just going to read 2 verses. It says, and Abraham ran unto the herd and fetched a calf, tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hasted to dress it. And he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat.
Mm-hmm.
But
so yeah, y'all don't even get into that, because when we get to that chapter, we got to deal with that. We're gonna deal with that.
But not even the milk and the butter. But here we talking about angels, and they set up a calf, and they did eat. Here we go again. That's
if
a problem.
If it was wrong, they would have been offended by that.
This is Genesis.
Yeah, all praises. All praises. All praises. So. Like I said, it says, every creeping creature that lives is food for you. I have given you all as I gave the green plants, but do not eat flesh with its life, its blood, right? But only your blood for your lives I require. From the hand of every beast I require it, and from the hand of man. From the hand of every man's brother I require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood is shed, for in the image of Elohim he has made man. Right? So again, he permits the eating of meat, but not without conditions. Right? So here's what we do know. Right? What we do know is this. We know that Noah understood the difference between clean and unclean. Right? So we do know that much. Genesis 7:2, of all clean beasts, take with you 7 pairs, a male and his female, and other beasts that are unclean, 2, a male and his female. Right? This is the Most High telling Noah what to put on this ark. So Noah understands the difference between a clean animal and an unclean animal. We also know that Elohim gave instructions regarding which meats are permissible for food to Israel. These instructions were based on the same standard of clean versus unclean that Noah understood. That much we do know, right? Leviticus 11:1. And Yahuwah spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying to them, speak to the children of Israel, saying, these are the living creatures which you do eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Jump down to verse 46. He explains the differences between the clean and the unclean and everything in between. And in verse 46, he says, this is the law or the Torah of the beast and the birds and of every living being, the creeping creatures in the waters, and of every being that swarms on the earth, to make a distinction, what? Between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creature that is eaten and the living creature that is not eaten. Right? So it's definitely it makes it, like I said, it's more difficult, and it's going to be a problematic point of view if we say, well, we have to use this original intent argument to say, well, so we got to throw all of these things in the Torah out, right? And we know that in itself is an unlawful thing, right?
The scale that says the states that you can eat, the scale is unbalanced. You know, you're going to have more doctrine in the states that you are permissible to eat these things than what you originally thought that we could not eat. So if you put it on a scale and you weighed it, you know, you have to come to the conclusion that I got it wrong.
All praises.
I've got this wrong.
All praises.
And once you are able to do that, that's when your growth starts. You know.
So now, I don't want y'all to answer this, right? Because we're gonna deal with it, but y'all have heard. Y'all have heard. We gonna get there. We slow walking this, right? But y'all have heard people say as a rebuttal to that, to say, not only do they excuse me, not only will they say the original intent argument, but then from that it goes into saying, well, all of those other laws that came after that was only the Most High turning and allowing man to do these things, but it never meant that he was okay with it. Right? That's the next step in the next phase in that argument, right? And that kind of argument is saying, well, no, he only did that because of the wickedness in people's heart. But then again, it's that point of view is problematic, because then we're not trusting the Most High to say, to speak for himself clearly what he expects and what he doesn't expect, right? And if he has a problem with something, can we all? I mean, I would like to be able to trust that he can speak for himself. If something is wrong, he's not going to tell me that it's okay. He's going to say it's wrong, and it doesn't matter how many times and no matter what time and generation it gets presented, wrong is wrong and right is right when it comes to the Most High, right? That's what I believe.
You know, that goes to the questions when they asked about divorce. You know, they asked Yahushua about divorce. Mm-hmm. He never said that the Most High authorized divorce. He said that who authorized the divorce? Moshe. He said, because of the wickedness of your hearts, Moshe is the one who gave you the law of divorce. It wasn't the Father. He said, I put you together for life. It's, you know, so he don't change. So when we get to that understanding that we are the one who's changing his law to fit our own narrative, then we get then maybe we can go to and come to the understanding. If we're able to come to the understanding, then maybe we can go back and correct ourselves, because we have no business changing any law. We have no business changing anything that he has written or given to us as law. We don't create law, we obey law.
So all praises. I'm going to touch on that particular point a little bit later. I was going to put it in that point in the lesson, but I chose to put another point from that conversation in that Mashiach has in that conversation on here. We'll deal with that when we get there. But excellent point. Excellent point. And we'll see we'll cross that bridge when we get there later in the lesson. All right. I'm looking at the time. All right. I'm going to put the pedal to the metal and I'm going to start moving. All right. All praises. So, okay. Yeah, we're done on this slide. All right. So, like I said, Elohim permits the eating of meat, but not without conditions. Excuse me. So here there is also a prohibition for eating meats with blood, which, if we recall, could be a callback to one of the issues which brought the flood if we were to accept the Enochic point of view. So remember, we covered this when we looked at the book of Enoch, 1 Enoch 7:4, and the giants turned against them in order to devour them, speaking of the mankind, and they began to sin against birds and against animals and against reptiles and against fish, and they devoured one another's flesh and they drank the blood from it, right? And so now, if we're to believe that this is one of the things that brought on the flood, now we can see why it might make sense that the Father is saying, hey, y'all can eat the animals, but not with the blood, right? Because the life is in the blood, and then he's going to go on and he explains that, right? So, again, eating of meat does not come without conditions. Leviticus 17:10, it says, and any man of the house of Israel, now get this, or of the strangers who sojourn among you. So that means that with this particular case, it's one law, both for native born and for the sojourner, right? There's one law for them all. So now, if we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of a conversation when we're talking about the Father's heart on the matter, I'm going to lean more on what he says in his word, right? Has anybody ever heard of the quote-unquote Noahide laws? The 7 Noahide laws, right? So this is a rabbinic concept that the rabbis come up with where they say there's only 7 things that the Gentiles outside of Israel are responsible for. And this is one of those things that they say, the blood, but then clean and unclean foods might not necessarily make that list. Because that goes into right, and that goes into Acts. We're going there. All praises. It's the next slide actually. But so this is what they'll say. These are Noahide laws, and that's all they have to do, nothing more, right? But then we can, even when we look at this particular law, we see that no, this is a law that he gave to Noah, and then not only did he give it to Noah, he's going to give it to Israel, and when he gave it to Israel, he applied that to the people outside of Israel too. If you're going to be within this nation, no blood, right?
He jumped up like he was woke the whole time. I mean, and that makes sense because even the soldier who sojourns with you, it only makes sense because here you have, again, the mixed multitude going into the land with Israel, and Joshua reinstituting the law to Israel, and there was not one word that Israel or the mixed multitude did not hear before they entered the land. So that makes all the sense in the world, especially if Israel is supposed to be a light unto the Gentile.
All praises.
There's not going to be 2 ways of living. If both parties are living together, it don't make sense.
All praises. Like it says, there's one law, right? For the native born and for the stranger. And that's on many, many things. So y'all think that maybe this is just when we dealing with the Torah as a whole? Maybe there's one law for all of us if we're going to call ourselves the fathers.
Well, no, Brother Eugene just reminded me, like, if Kodesh, sorry, he just reminded me, like, if the Most High, he has his children, and if you adopt kids, like those children that come into your home is not going to have a totally different set of rules than what your natural blood-born kids have. Everybody in the house is going to have the same rules. So, any stranger or sojourner that comes into the house of Israel, they're going to be living the same way.
All praises. So y'all see how, like I said, what we're doing is going through this text, we're able to start building a biblical worldview, right? Like we're able to start answering questions that are really simple when we just slow it down and we start to look at it. Well, what is this really saying, right? Okay, Elder, and then the Dabi, and we're going to move on. Go ahead.
I'm just allowing back on what you're saying. When you grafted into a tree, you don't keep the natural branches that you had before you were grafted in. You're going to partake into the tree that you are grafted to, right? So that means you're going to do everything the tree does. You ain't going to be doing things that you used to do on your own. Now you are mandated to do exactly what the tree that you are grafted into does.
All praises.
And there's no question about it.
You rely on that tree, not the tree relying on you. All praises. And then the Dabi, and then we're going to keep it moving.
I just wanted to give the example of circumcision would be another example with Abraham when Abihu commanded him, not only him, but also those that are born in his house or brought with silver, for in any foreigner who is not of your seed, he who is born in your house and he who was bought with your silver, he should be circumcised. It's the everlasting covenant. So it's the same concept like household. If you choose to abide with me and choose to serve me, well, these are the requirements for you as well. One law for the nation and for the, how does it go?
For the native born and for
the native and the stranger,
sojourner,
yes.
yeah. So all praises. So, and we're gonna deal with that more when we get to that chapter. But yeah, all praises. What we're starting to see is that we can rely and we can trust on the Father to speak for Himself, right? And He's gonna be consistent, right? So all praises. So, verse 11, I'm going to start from verse 11. For the life of the flesh is of the blood, is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar place, or upon the altar to make atonement for your lives, for it is the blood that makes atonement for the life. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, no being among you eats blood, nor does any stranger who sojourns among you eat blood. And any man from the children of Israel, from the strangers who sojourn among you, who hunts and catches any beast or bird. Now, right here it says any beast or bird, but we understand that the context of this is what? Leviticus 11 has already been established and has already been discussed. Any beast or bird doesn't mean you can eat any beast or bird for Israel or the sojourner in Israel. It means of those clean beasts, right? We understand that. It says, which is eaten shall pour out his blood and cover it with dust, for it is the life of all flesh. His blood is for its life. And I said to the children of Israel, do not eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is his blood. Anyone eating it is cut off. All right, so what's interesting is we see that this same standard is carried through from Noah to Israel and its inhabitants, right, not native born. And it was also still being upheld for new believers post-Mashiach, after the Messiah, right, in the New Testament. This is Acts, right? So it was understood that Gentiles needed to be taught this very early in their faith, and that this was a practice that was popular in their native culture, right? So what is interesting is it was understood that their faith was not intended to stop there, and that if they could adhere to this, among other matters, they would continue to learn the rest of the law of Moses every Shabbat, right? So Acts 15:19, he says, therefore I judge that we should not trouble those from among the nations who are turning to Elohim, but that we write to them to abstain from the defilement of idols, from whoring, and from what is strangled, and from blood. For from ancient generations Moses has in every city those proclaiming him being read in the congregations every Shabbat, right? So what is this saying? This is saying, hey, these are the basic things that we need them to stop now, because these are major things. And then from there, we don't move on, but then they can continue as they learn. They're going to come to the synagogue every Shabbat, and they'll learn the rest of the law of Moses, and they'll continue to grow in their faith, right? Acts 21:25, but concerning the nations who believe, we have written and decided that they should keep themselves from what is offered to idols and blood, what is strangled, and whoring, right? These were the first things, but that's just the starting place. That's not the end-all, be-all, right? So we can throw the Noahide laws out the door. This is just something that we are starting with because these are major things that they had going on in their culture. But from that point forward, they can come and kick it with us on Shabbat every week and learn. Go ahead, Ak.
And this is where an issue comes in for those who like brings up the Noahide thing, right? Because they'll quickly tell you, well, we don't have to, those are old laws. Those are Mosaic laws. We don't have to keep the law. But what they're saying is you jumped over the Mosaic law and went all the way back to Noah. Mm-hmm. That don't even make sense. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me, well, Moses' law don't matter, but Noah's law matters. Mm-hmm. Come on, that's why.
Again, like I said, the essence of this is how we have to be responsible when dealing with the text and how to rightly divide it, and that includes us taking it as a whole, right? Even when we come across something that might not necessarily jive with our personal opinion, right? You got to take the text as a whole, and you got to represent the text as a whole as what it is. But what happens a lot of times, like I said, is we will start to look for ways to cherry pick the parts that we want, and then that's where it comes into, like you said, I got to cut the whole law of Moses out, but then I'm gonna go before that with Noah, and then, or whatever the case is. That's where we start getting to, like I said, these arguments of, well, Yah's original intent, his original heart, but like, no, we have to take his word for what it is, and say, if this is what he said, this is what he's okay with, and this is what he's not, and I'm not gonna add to it nor take away from it, right?
One of the excuses I used to hear a lot, and still do to this day, some of them say that, all of those laws and statutes, that was just for Israel. Not realizing we are Israel.
Absolutely. All praises. So, like I said, what we're doing is we're learning principles about being responsible when we're dealing with the text. This is really as simple as that, right? So we see that when it comes to our application of Torah, it would seem that Elohim does not do away with his instructions throughout the generations, but instead he seems to build upon it, right? So first he gave vegetables, and then he built something upon that to say, okay, well, now you can throw meat in with that. Now, that does not mean that now we only eat meat and we throw away the vegetables. Right? That's not what that means. It means now he's building upon this thing and expounding and making it and getting a little more detailed with it. That's all that it means, right? So when a principle is established in his Torah, it does not nullify the previous standard. Instead, it builds upon the principle. And in many cases, when a law is expounded upon within the text, it is done with the intent to further clarify or protect those involved when the application of a law is required. Right? So this is a fundamental principle that we see Mashiach apply in his walk. Right? So for Mashiach, it was all about accepting the word in its fullness and its totality. Right? So Matthew chapter 4 and verse 5. And I skipped the question. I'm answering the question of, well, what principle can we learn about how Torah works from what we've studied this far? Right? How does the Torah work? Because we know, like I said, these lessons are we can't control who these lessons are going to be in front of. It might be a new believer. It might be somebody that's not even a believer in our particular walk at all. This is the first time they're coming across this kind of information, right? So this is what I'm asking. Well, what principle can we learn from how the Torah works, how the law works, right? From what we've studied this far. It's not studies, from what we've studied thus far. All right, so like I said, for Mashiach, it was all about accepting the word in its fullness and totality, right? So Matthew 4 and 5. Then the devil took him up to the set-apart city and set him on the edge of the set-apart place and said to him, if you are the son of Elohim, throw yourself down, for it has been written, he shall command his messengers concerning you. And where does that come from? It comes from the word, right? It's a nitpick from the word, right? Psalm 91 verse 11. And in their hands they shall bear you up so that you do not dash your foot against a stone. Psalm 91 and 12, right? But what did Mashiach say? I can't just take that one precept, or I can't just take that one thing and come up with a whole doctrine off of it, right? I have to take his word in totality and come to my conclusion based off of that, right? Matthew 4 and 7, Yahushua said to him, it has also been written, right? So for the vegetarian argument, right, that says that, no, it's sin because of his original intent was this, then my response and my rebuttal to that is what? But it's also written, right? So how do I reconcile this? It can't be a matter of sin because sin is transgression of his law. And it's also written here in his law that I can have this meat as long as I'm doing it this way. Right? So Yahushua said to him, it has also been written, you shall not try Yahuwah your Elohim. right? So that's always going to be our answer when we're dealing with these things in the text, especially when differences in belief or understanding comes up. Then it's our job to start to reason with one another and say, well, hey, well, it's also written, right? And then if it's a known, all praises, we could draw the line in the sand, right? But if it's an unknown, then we say, hey, well, yeah, that part is written, but that conclusion you came to, that's not based on anything that's written, and I can't go that far, right? We got to be responsible with it. Matthew 5:17. Now, notice all of these things in Matthew 5. What is it dealing with, right? So, like, that's the point that Zakim brought out earlier. That's in that same chapter, right? So, Matthew 5:17. Do not think that I came to destroy the law of the prophets. This is Mashiach, right? In the KJV, these are red letters. He says, I did not come to destroy, but to complete. Or, yeah, KJV, they was translated as to fulfill. You look at the definition in Greek of that word for fulfill, and it literally means to complete or to point towards an end goal of something, right? He says, for truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth shall pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah or from the law until all be done. And all has not been done. There's a lot of things that have not yet been done or completed, right, as far as the law and the prophets go. So whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of the heavens. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees. What was the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees? It was a self-righteousness. They again let the cart drive the horse, right? They had a belief, and then they formed all of their doctrines and tried to cherry pick and make the word fit around what their belief was, instead of saying, this is what the Father said, and let me form my belief around that, right? They were not focused on building the kingdom. Instead, they was focused on establishing a religion. Two very different things, and y'all going to keep hearing me bring that up as we keep going throughout these next few weeks, right? So he says, you shall by no means enter into the kingdom of the heavens, right? Jump down to Matthew 5:38. Here's an example. Now he says, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Where's that at? That's in the Torah. So that is in Exodus 21 and 24. Okay. So now let me ask y'all this. Is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, is that a righteous principle? So lawfully speaking, we talking about when applied properly, is that a righteous principle? Right? So it is a righteous principle, right? Now, verse 39, he says, but I say to you, do not resist the wicked. Whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. So now, the issue is the way that they translate that, right? They say, but. And that but makes it seem like he's going against, or he's changing something with the Torah, right? And saying that eye for eye, tooth for a tooth is not righteous. But we know that when it was to be applied, that was a righteous judgment, right? It's a righteous judgment. And so do I do away with that part of the Torah because now I'm saying Mashiach is saying something different, or maybe is there a translation issue? We have to start being responsible with the text. Right? So now that word for but, if you look it up in the Greek, the word there is de, if I'm not mistaken, and that word is really just a conjunction. It can be translated as and I say, but I say, for I say, because I say. That word could have been translated in a number of ways. Now, if they translated it as and I say to you, we might not look at it as a statement that is contradicting the Torah, right? But now what we're doing is, like I said, we're building upon a thing, right? We're not doing away with it. We're actually building upon this principle, right? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is a righteous principle. But what Mashiach is saying is, but hey, why do things have to get there? If we're dealing in mercy and applying Torah properly, it doesn't have to get there. But that does not mean that if it does get there, eye for eye and tooth for tooth is not lawful and not a righteous judgment. because some cases when we do get there, it is, right? And that's just is what it is. So we got to start learning how to rightly divide the word of truth and rightly understand what the text is saying and how it's presenting itself, right? So I think the essence of this principle can be summed up with 1 Timothy chapter 1, right? 1 Timothy chapter 1, starting at verse 5, is this. He says, now the goal of this command is love from a clean heart, from a good conscience, and a sincere belief, which some, having missed the goal, turned aside to senseless talk, wishing to be teachers of Torah, understanding neither what they say nor concerning what they strongly affirm. And we know that the law or the Torah is good if one uses it what? Lawfully or legitimately, right? So anything that we find in the Torah or in the law, all of it is lawful and it's good, it's righteous if we're rightly divided and rightly applying it, right? The only issue comes when we abuse Torah, but no principle of Torah is going to be deemed as unrighteous as long as we're not using it unrighteously, right? So I did say I'm going to touch on that point of divorce, right? Like he said, this is not to do away with marriage as a whole. This is not to do away with a righteous divorce, because there are some instances, in some cases where that is a right ruling and it is a righteous judgment. But what Mashiach is saying is, hey, don't abuse this and take this out of its context. And now you just saying, well, we're permitted to divorce, so we can do this any kind of way, which way we want to do it. No, there's a right ruling to this, right? And no, there are some circumstances where divorce is the righteous answer, and that just is what it is. But then there are some cases where the principle is abused, and then it turns into something else, right? So you have to rightfully divide the word of truth. The law is good if one uses it lawfully, right? So we good on that point so far, right? All praises. So Genesis 9, 8 through 15, for the sake of time, I'm gonna pass by this because I don't really have anything to expound on it. It's just dealing with, the covenant and the rainbow, not destroying the land anymore by a flood, right? And then we know that the next time is going to be what? Fire, right? So prepare for that. But I'm not going to dig into that in this particular study for the sake of time. We're going to keep moving, right? So Genesis 9 and 18, and we're going to close out here because this closes out this chapter. Genesis 9 and 18 through verse 29, right? What's going on here, right? We got to talk about what's happening here with Canaan and with Ham and Noah, right? So just a rhetorical, for the sake of time, I'm not going to get answers on this one, but just something for us to think about as we continue to go throughout the rest of the study. What do you think the writer's intention for including this story is in the text, right? What was the writer's intention for including this in the text? And then why is this story important, and what point is it trying to convey to its audience? We got to answer that, right? Because now we're starting to deal with something that's obscure, right? So Genesis 9 and 18, and the sons of Noah went out of the ark, who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan, and these three were the sons of Noah, and all the earth was overspread from them. All right, so right there, I'm going to tell you, that has something to do, that statement right there has something to do with why this is in the text. Has anybody ever looked at this story in that text and be like, why is it here? Like, why is it in this place? Because it's like, we talking about coming off of the ark, and then you just get this random story that's like thrown in this, and it's like, what? Where did this come from? Right? One minute we was talking about he sent out the raven, and then we talking about, okay, no animals after you get off the ark, and everything is how life is to be when you get off the ark, and then we jump from that to this story in their family. And it's like, where did this come from? Right? And so that tells me, well, and it's obscure on top of that, what is the writer's intention? Why does the Father want this here in this way? Right? So we're going to try to explore that, okay? So, in Noah, a man of the soil began and planted a vineyard, And he drank the wine and was drunk and became uncovered in his tent. And Ham, excuse me, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. So Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father, but their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. And Noah woke from his wine, and he knew what his younger son had done to him, and he said, "Cursed is Canaan." So now we get another character added into this mix. Okay, just cursed is Canaan, and let him become a servant of servants to his brothers. And he said, "Blessed be Yahuwah, the Elohim of Shem, and let Canaan become his servant. Let Elohim enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan become his servant." And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, so all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. We don't hear no more about Noah, right? Like, this is it. And they wanted to end it on this note, this story. Well, what is the point of this, right? So, all praises. Let me make sure I'm not skipping anything. All right, sorry, y'all. That's the best depiction that I could find online that wasn't too clear to depict what they look like. Well, I'm going to leave that there. So, all praises. So, what's going on in this story? Here we have an example of something obscure within the biblical text that leaves us scratching our heads with questions. How do we deal with this kind of obscure text? Okay, all praises. So, some questions that one might ask, right? What exactly did Ham do? And is there a possibility that more was done than just looking? Right? Why is Ham's son Canaan cursed instead of Ham? Well, why was the punishment so severe? Right? If he only looked, why is he this mad about that? And then what is being conveyed to the audience? Why are details left out? Right? Why are the details left out? That's the question. So we're going to walk through it. We're going to walk through it. Yeah. Now, y'all remember when I started this, what did I say? I said there are known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns, right? And you got to know where you are in this. And then from that, is it okay to sometimes just say, hey, I don't know, right? This is what we do know, and this is what we don't know. Is that okay? All praises. Some things are not, like your elder said, that is wisdom. Some things ain't good to know for all people, right? All praises. So we're going to keep moving. What I can say is this. If Elohim wanted it to be in the text, it'd have been there. Somehow, some way, we would have had it, right? All praises. So, like I said, what exactly did Ham do? We got all of these questions, right? Here's what we do know, right? And what I'm laying out is I'm giving a blueprint for how we can responsibly start to study the text, right? Because so often we have all these questions, right? And we might take one thing and it's like, well, I don't know what to do with this. And is this saying this, or whatever the case might be? What we're learning now is how we can start to approach the text and be responsible with it, right? Here's what we do know. Let's start there. Known knowns, right? We know that we are not alone in questioning what is going on with this story, right? So the story was debated by the rabbis in ancient times, right? Just like we don't know what was going on with it, they've been asking these questions and saying, so whoa, same questions. Why is this punishment so severe? Is that the only thing that he did? Did he do more? Why is it, if it was that kind of severe thing, he had to have done something more, right? But now we're starting to lean on imagination, right? Okay. So the Genesis account is obscure. That's what we do know. It's obscure. And it leaves much room for imagination to fill in the gaps. It's some things that it just does not explain, right? And then Genesis proposes that Noah was drunken with wine. His son Ham looks upon his nakedness. I got those in quotes for a reason. And for this, his son Canaan is cursed. That's what we know, right? Now, what the details are to that story, that is a what? It's an unknown, right? But we're going to dig into it. We're going to dig into it. We're going to dig into it. Now, I'm saying, and now, Elder, what I'm saying is I'm saying that based off of the Genesis 9 account in the Genesis 9 text, right? So we're going to keep moving, and we're going to start to deal with some of the other positions, right? But then I'm going to ask, okay, so how do we reconcile all of this at the end, right? All right, so, and again, the question is, how faithful am I to what the word says, right? Jubilees 7, right? Now, this is the book of Jubilees. Again, y'all have seen me go to book of Jubilees several times at this point. It's a quote-unquote non-canonical book, but then, like I said, that opens up another question of what does canonical even mean? How did that even come to play? Whatever. We've already discussed some of that in times past. All I can say is don't start on this lesson. Start at the beginning and make sure that you follow along with it if you haven't already been doing so. Okay? All praises. So Jubilees chapter 7, starting at verse 1, and we're going to read through verse 12. This is the Jubilean view of the same account, right? So it says, in the 7th week, in the first year thereof, in this Jubilee, Noah planted vines on the mountain on which the ark had rested, named Lubar, one of the Ararat mountains, and they produced fruit in the 4th year, and he guarded their fruit and gathered it in this year in the 7th month. And he made wine therefrom and put it into a vessel and kept it until the 5th year, until the 1st day on the new moon of the 1st month. And there's a reason why Jubilees is even presenting that information in that way. And they're trying, the purpose of the writer of Jubilees is to present Noah as a man that is following Torah. If you go into Leviticus, you'll find that there is a law that talks about what you can do with fruit in the years of its growth and development, and you got to wait until the 5th year before you can partake in it. So that's what that's trying to, but we're going to keep continuing to move, right? It says, and he celebrated the joy, the joy of the day of this feast, and he made a burnt sacrifice unto Yahuwah, 1 young ox and 1 ram, 7 sheep, each a year old, and a kid of the goats, that he might make atonement thereby for himself and his sons. And he prepared the kid first and placed some of its blood on the flesh that was on the altar which he had made, and all the fat he laid on the altar where he made the burnt sacrifice, and the ox and the ram and the sheep, and he laid all their flesh upon the altar, and he placed all their offerings mingled with oil upon it, and afterwards he sprinkled wine on the fire which he had previously made on the altar, and he placed incense on the altar and caused a sweet savor to ascend, acceptable before Yahuwah his Elohim, and he rejoiced and drank of this wine, he and his children with joy. And it was evening, and he went into his tent, and being drunken, he lay down and slept and was uncovered in his tent as he slept. Okay, so hold on to that. And Ham saw Noah his father naked, and went forth and told his 2 brethren without or outside. And Shem took his garment and arose, he and Japheth, and they placed the garment on their shoulders and went backward and covered the shame of their father, and their faces were backward. And Noah awoke from his sleep and knew all that his younger son had done unto him, and he cursed his son and said, Cursed be Canaan, and enslaved servant shall he be unto his brethren. And he blessed Shem and said, Blessed be Yahuwah Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be a servant, and Elohim shall enlarge Japheth, and Elohim shall dwell in the and Elohim shall dwell in the dwelling of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Oh, that's a little bit different, right? But even with the differences, what's the main point? It's kind of the same, right? Is portraying the scenario of what happened as he saw his father. He looked upon his father laying naked in the... Okay, so that's the Jubilean account, right? The Jubilean account seems to agree with the account in Genesis 9, right? Now, here's a nugget. According to the writer of Jubilees, right, and that's a conversation for another day, right? I'm not getting into all of that part of it. But what I am saying is that the Jubilean view seems to agree with the view of the Torah. And from that, what I'm also going to say is that to the writer of Jubilees, the point of this seems to be doing some foreshadowing about the relationship between the descendants of Shem and the descendants of Canaan. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there, and we're going to pick that back up at the very end. Okay? But so far, so good, right? Jubilees is only saying that he saw his father naked. Okay, Jubilees gave a lot of additional details, but no other details regarding that. It kind of says that what happened is what it was that happened, right? That's a Jubilean view. I'll leave it up to you to agree or disagree, but that's that view, okay? A Talmudic, or the rabbinic view, right? Because like I said, they had their conversations about this. This is in the Talmud, is Sanhedrin 70a, and we're going to read 18 through 20. So if you want to look this up, you can find it on Safaria.com or just Google that location, and you'll be able to Google it, and then you can read it for yourself. But it's right here on the screen, okay? So it says, having cited the passage discussing Noah, the Gemara enters into a discussion about what was actually done. So now, do we see how what's starting to happen here? There's an obscurity with the text, and this might be something that leaves room for our imagination or room for us to ponder on things. And now this is the thing that makes this dangerous, because whenever we're dealing with a mystery in the text, something that's not fully fleshed out, it leaves room and it leaves the door open for us to do what? Come up with our own doctrine, our own new understanding, our own new thing, right? But we know that it would be irresponsible for us to do what? Lean on our own understanding. We need to do what? Lean on the truth. Okay, all praises. So it says, Rav and Shemuel disagreed. One says that Ham castrated Noah, right? So he made him where he couldn't have kids no more. We'll put it like that, right? He castrated Noah, and one says that Ham sodomized him. They go that far, okay? So one rabbi said, hey, he castrated him. The other rabbi said, well, no, he didn't castrate him. He had relations with his father in an unlawful way, okay? The Gemara explains, the one who says that Ham castrated Noah adduces the following proof. Since he injured Noah with respect to the possibility of conceiving a fourth son, so now they're giving a reason. But was any of this reason in the text? Okay, all praises. So it says, basically he was afraid that Noah was going to have a fourth son, which Noah wanted but could no longer have. Therefore, Noah cursed him by means of Ham's fourth son. Ham's sons were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. See Genesis 10 and 6. And of all of these, it was Canaan whom Noah cursed. See Genesis 9, 25 through 28. And the one who says that Ham sodomized Noah learned this from a verbal analogy between the words, and he saw, and he saw. Right now, mind you, they're translating this from Hebrew. And I'm going to leave that there. That's not what I'm not trying to explain Talmud like that. But give me 1 second. It says, here it is written, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father. And there it is written, and Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, and he took her and lay with her and afflicted her. Now, that's Genesis 34 and 2. That's much later, right? This indicates that the term saw alludes to sexual intercourse. So what did they just do? They precept. They did some precepting, right? But is that precepting good precepting? Oh, okay, all praises. Sister Allison.
What the other part that I heard of what it could have been was he saw the mother.
We going there next.
Okay.
Okay. All praises. Yeah, I got you. We going there. We going there next.
I'm sitting here patiently.
Yeah, we going there next. I want to deal. I'm just again. We just laying all of the facts and we just laying all of the points of views out there. All right, we going there next. All right, so the Gemara asks, granted, according to the one who says that Ham castrated Noah, is it due to the reason that Noah cursed Ham by means of Ham's fourth son? But according to the one who says that Ham sodomized him, what is different about his fourth son? He should have cursed Ham directly. The Gemara answers, this sage holds that both this offense and that offense were committed. So another one came in and said, hey, he did both. He castrated him and he sodomized his own father, right? And all agree that Ham castrated Noah. So they all of the rabbis, if you ask a Talmudic Jew-ish person today, this would be their opinion on it, to say, well, we know what really happened to Noah in that day. Noah was castrated by him, right? Or Noah was castrated by Ham, and that's the reason why Canaan was cursed, right? So all of them agree on that. And then even if you start to look in some of the later writings, like in the Aramaic Targums, some of the Targums, when they go on to give their commentary on Genesis, that's what their point of view is, right? One second, I'm gonna finish this reading here. Okay, so it says, all agree that Ham castrated Noah, and some say that Ham also sodomized him. All right, so go ahead, Zakan.
Well, we know that Noah kept the law. Mm-hmm. And we know that for the law states that we are respectful to our parents. And doing something like that would have been a death sentence. Okay? In any of those cases, that would have been a death sentence, because it is demanded that by law that whoever does those things, especially sinning against a parent, that's automatic death sentence. Yahushua told him in Matthew said that you change the law, that you're taking a bribe, but when the law says that you're supposed to take this person out over what they've done to their parents. So that kind of like puts that in a perspective of not exactly what it, for me, that cannot exactly be what happened because of the law, because Ham's wife could have continued to raise those children without him. That's a death sentence.
Hey, like I said, all I want to do now is just gather information. But hey, right there with you. I'm just saying, hey, we throwing, this is a real way that people look at it, because again, well, what exactly did he do? We got all these questions when we're dealing with an obscure text. But again, my question was, is it all right to just say, hey, here's what we do know, and anything else outside of that, who knows, right? So we're going to keep moving, right? An alternative view to this text, is that Ham had inappropriate relations with Noah's wife while he slept in a drunken state, right? So this point of view is proposed because, quote unquote, uncovering a man's nakedness could be used euphemistically, right? So I'm going to emphasize the word could, right? It could be used euphemistically, but if we're being honest with the text, we do have to still leave it on the table to say, could this just be the literal thing, the literal meaning of it too, though, right? We can't eliminate that off of the table, right? So we do have evidence of such a thing in the Torah, speaking of that term, uncovering nakedness, right? Leviticus 18:1 says, and Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, I am Yahuwah your Elohim. Do not do as they do in the land of Mizraim or Egypt where you dwelt, and do not do as they do in the land of where? Canaan, okay, where I am bringing you, and do not walk in their laws. So there are some practices that might, resemble what this point of view is presenting with Canaan in the land of Canaan, okay? So he says, do my right rulings and guard my laws to walk in them. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, and you shall guard my laws and my right rulings, which a man does and lives by them. I am Yahuwah. No one is to approach anyone of his own flesh to uncover his nakedness. And in this context, in Leviticus 18, uncovering the nakedness is talking about what? Some kind of sexual interaction, right? And it's going to start to explain these different things, right? He says, I am Yahuwah. Verse 7. Excuse me, y'all. The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother, you do not uncover. She is your mother. You do not uncover her nakedness, right? So we understand that uncovering the nakedness in this context is literally talking about that's your mama, that's your daddy. You don't lay with them the way you lay with someone that is not related, right? Excuse me. Leviticus 18:8, and this is where they get this from, right? The nakedness of your father's wife, you do not uncover. Why? Because that is your father's nakedness. So now what they're saying is, to call back to Genesis 9, right, is that when it talks about he looked upon the nakedness of his father, what this is really talking about is either his mother or at the very least his father's wife, right? Okay. So the nakedness of your sister, the daughter of your father, or the daughter of your mother, whether born at home or elsewhere, their nakedness you do not uncover. The nakedness of your son's daughter or your daughter's daughter, their nakedness you do not uncover, for theirs is your own nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife's daughter, brought forth by your father, she is your sister, you do not uncover her nakedness. Oh, praises. Verse 12, the nakedness of your father's sister you do not uncover, she is your father's flesh. The nakedness of your mother's sister you do not uncover, for she is your mother's flesh. Nakedness of your father's brother you do not uncover. You do not approach his wife, she is your aunt. The nakedness of your daughter-in-law you do not uncover, she is your son's wife. And you do not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your brother's wife you do not uncover, it is your brother's nakedness. The nakedness of a woman and her daughter you do not uncover, nor do you take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter to uncover her nakedness. They are her relatives. It is wickedness. All right. So in the case of Leviticus 18, we do have evidence of the uncovering nakedness alluding to some sort of sexual misconduct. Right. So again, I'm going to keep asking the question, though. How faithful am I to what the word says, the text? In its context, in it, how it's presenting itself in that, how faithful am I going to be to that when I'm dealing with something that is obscure, right? So the question is, how do we deal with these sorts of obscure texts, right? What is the most responsible way to deal with the various points of view on a topic that is as obscure as this, right? So as we can see, there are cases where the scriptures can leave us with unanswered questions, right? Here we have uncovered a few ways that people have understood this passage, right? One is the literal understanding. Ham saw with his eyes the nakedness of his father. His brothers came back with a towel, covered it up, right? That's the literal understanding. The rabbinic view, Ham castrated his father, right? To prevent him from having a fourth son, which would have lessened his inheritance. And according to some, Ham even sodomized his own father, right? And then we have the other alternative view, right? And like I said, we just went over these quote unquote precepts. If uncovering nakedness is a euphemism, Ham had relations with Noah's wife, possibly his own mother, right? So we got three routes, three options of what this could mean. When this is the case, is it okay for me to say, I don't know, right? If these details were left obscure by the writer, is it possible that these details are not important to the point that the writer is conveying with the story? Do y'all think that the purpose of this story was for us to look at Ham and say, or look at Canaan and to say, hey, well, what happened and what did he do? Was that the purpose of why this was written, or is there something else? There's another point that the writer is trying to convey to the audience. Go ahead, Elder.
You know, when you look at some of the things that we've looked over today, these are commandments that are going to be later on given as far as the Mosaic law is concerned, quote unquote. Because when you looking at this thing, and he looked upon his father's nakedness, no matter how you looking at it, it was a violation of a law. Now, therefore, when we look at it, what happened was you got the earlier we got the things of the clean and unclean, which follows in the law. These are all preludes to the law that's going to be given later on, and the punishments thereof. So I'm just looking at it as preludes to the actual law being given.
All praises. All praises. Like I said, we have to start the question and say, okay, so then what are our known knowns from the text? And then what, if these are the known knowns and there are things that were intentionally left out or details that were intentionally left out, is there a reason for that, right? If he wanted us to know what exactly Ham did, it might have been recorded, right? But considering that it wasn't, and we got to do all of this precept into it, maybe that wasn't the moral of the story that the writer wanted us to get. I'm not saying that we can't figure it out. I'm just saying that might not be the point of why this is here in the text, right? Okay, all praises. So, like I said, is it okay sometimes to just say, hey, here's what we don't know, here's what we do know, and hey, that's a possibility. I'm not going to say it's not a possibility. Anything can be a possibility. I don't know, right? So it would seem that instead of debating what happened to Noah, the more important point is that we understand why this story is placed here in the text and what it is foreshadowing, right? So the story serves as a foreshadowing for later relations between Israel and the inhabitants of the land of Canaan, or of the land that they will conquer and take as their own, right? So the Canaanites, the descendants of Ham, and his cursed son Canaan will later become central figures in the biblical narrative, and this story serves as a proof for why things will become what they will become. The grammar is way off. Many generations later. Okay, so that's the point of why the writer, I believe, has this story here in the text. Where it's in the text, because we're going to see this point is reassured as the next two chapters of Genesis is an origin story for the nations, right? This is transitioning us right into the nations. And the reason of why all of this whole story is here is to show why the descendants of Shem are going to be the ones that are going to be important from this point forward, right? And it's going to start to explain the relationship between the sons of Japheth and how their relationship, well, they're dwelling in the tents of Shem. So maybe Japheth is in the land of Shem. And then we have all of these other things that it's going to start to explain later on as we get into later parts of the biblical narrative, all right? So ultimately, this is why Israel becomes a main focus in the biblical text from Genesis chapter 12 and on, right? So that's really what it's getting at. Agran.
So you also see, dealing with the nakedness thing or whatnot. I mean, like you said, the things you don't know, you just don't know if it's not there. So if you're taking it from Scripture, you see in Exodus 20, verse 25 and 26, it says, "And if thou wilt make me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone. For if thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. Neither shalt thou go up by steps unto my altar, that thy nakedness be not discovered thereon." So it could be just as simple as not seeing
nakedness.
The nakedness, because it could turn someone to perverseness.
Absolutely.
That's it.
So all praises, right? So you see how the essence of this is this, right? Which is why I said it keeps going back to how faithful am I to what the word says. Do I know my known knowns? Do I know my known unknowns? Do I know what happens a lot of times is this, and this is the danger of it, because, and we don't mean any harm by it, but it is a danger of it, and I want everybody that's hearing me to be aware of it, right? Is what can happen is this. We can take an idea, and then we can start to precept that idea, right? So now, one might say Leviticus 18 are the precepts that I should use for that. But then another might say what you just read out of Exodus 20, and that will be the precepts for that. And then, so now we got two completely different things. One is leading us to, no, this is just talking about literal nakedness, because the Father is that's a disrespectful thing to uncover the nakedness of your father and to not care. You see your father in this state and you won't want to do nothing about it. What is that saying about your heart as his son? And then it leads, if we're literally looking at it, then we got to say, okay, so then when it says that the two brothers walked with a cloth and they covered their father's nakedness, is this still talking about that he covered up the wife of Noah, or is this, what is this talking about? Why didn't it say that they covered their mother? Or why didn't it will lend us to more questions, because it is dealing with an obscure text, right? And then the other point of view is, one says, well, if it's a sexual euphemism, it don't necessarily have to be. The rabbi said it ain't got to be with his mama. It can be he did something to his daddy directly. And then we got, like I said, the other point of view, which is, hey, just a literal. I just think he saw him and he looked upon him, and for whatever reason, that was, it warranted that kind of response.
And so it could be very dangerous because now you're starting. I'm sorry. It could be very dangerous because now you're starting to add stuff to, just creating things from your wicked imagination, and now you're bearing false witness. So that's where it can definitely become dangerous at.
I just want to elaborate just a little bit. Like you said, what it could be. It could just been like, hey, I saw Dad. Hey, y'all, God laughing and joking. Hey, I saw Dad naked. He in there passed out. He in there done. And then the brothers are like,
you ain't do nothing.
What would you do that for? Why you say that?
Nothing funny about this,
right?
So the essence of the conversation, like I said, is for us to, is it okay sometimes for us just to say, hey, I don't know. Here's what we do know. And then this is kind of based off of what we know. Here's a possibility. Here's one way of looking at it. Here's another way of looking at it. Here's another way of looking at it. Which one of those ways? Genesis 9 is not saying the details aren't there. And hey, if you choose this one, hey, all praises. If you choose this one, hey, all praises. If you choose this one, hey, all praises. But the issue will become if I say and establish as a doctrine, and I'm saying, no, it's one of these, right? Like the rabbis are now saying, no, it's this one. We all agree on this. Now I'm forming a religion, and now we have you see what I'm saying? So this is where it starts to become problematic. So this is it's a example. Like I said, we saw time and time again throughout this chapter examples of how doctrines can be made, but you got to know exactly what your limitations are and with the text itself, and then you got to decide to say, hey, so where am I on this? And like I said, we dealing with this now because it's doing some foreshadowing, because later on we're gonna start to deal with other topics and other cans of worms, and it's like, we got to be honest with the text, and then from that point forward, we can move forward, right? And yeah, I won't go too much into it until we cross that bridge. But yeah, what we're laying out now is what is your biblical framework, and then what is your method for exegeting the word and not eisegete, right? And then know when I am in a situation like this where I'm like, my gut, man, I just don't know. I can't see the Most High cursing him for just looking, right? But I have to be honest with myself. If that's my point of view, I have to be honest with myself and say, the text doesn't lend itself to that. That's just my own personal opinion on it, and which you're entitled to have, but just know that that's what it is, right?
was just going to say,
Definitely.
a lot of times it's curiosity. You have the rabbis, which are teachers, that people are coming to them and like, man, what is this? Just like, Pastor, man, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? It's curiosity. You're reading the word. You're trying to gain more understanding, wisdom, and, especially for those who are starting off and you have so many questions. And so you go to these people who are supposed to be learned and, a higher in that knowledge of it. And so a lot of it is just curiosity. So when you have like those who have a title like the rabbi or teacher, and this is what they're known for, oftentimes you will get that, okay, well, I got to figure this out because this is so-and-so, and his so-and-so here. So you most likely, you're not going to get, I don't know, because people are looking for you for the answers. And instead of you, even though it is best to say, if you don't know, you don't know. If you don't have enough information to be able to support what you're saying, it's literally based on, okay, well, this is here and precepting. So like it's just, I want to also say, like, just for people out there, like, I understand the need or the desire to want to be, have more information and be, man, I wonder what this is really saying, to you. How would you direct somebody if somebody were to be like, you know what, I'm in the scriptures and I'm seeing this information, but it's not clear to me what this means. Like, what would you say to help someone, like for someone who may be online and they really are trying to figure out, okay, I don't understand, it just ends here, period. There's a period here, but it doesn't say anything else more.
All praises. So like the essence of it will be what I've been trying to convey with the lesson, right? Which is, it's okay sometimes to not know. That is okay. It is all right. If it was something that the Father wanted to be known, it would have been there, or somewhere. We can figure it out somewhere, right? But then if it's not, then, it's okay. If we can't find a text to prove it, then it's all right to say, hey, I don't know, but this is my personal belief on it, or my personal, but I gotta be honest with that, and I gotta let you know when it's something that's just my personal, right? Like, I have to do that, and I have to properly explain, first and foremost, that there is something that sometimes it's just things that we don't know, and that's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay to say, hey, I don't know. I'll tell you what I do know, and that's as far as it goes. All we can say is Ham did something that was disrespectful to his father, and it was disrespectful enough to warrant his son Canaan being cursed, and his son, Canaan is now, he's going to be cursed and a servant to his brothers, and Yefet is going to dwell in the tents of Shem, right? And Shem is going to be blessed. Like, that's what we do know. Now, from that, we can say, hey, there's some possibilities, right? And that's fair. I'm okay with that. Like, I'm all right with saying, hey, there's possibilities, which is why I try to convey some of the different possibilities in the lesson. Say, hey, from what we do know, this is what we got. Now, from that, there are some other possibilities. Which one of these possibilities? I ain't going to tell you which one to believe. I'm just going to say, hey, these are the possibilities. And it could be any of them. It may not be none of them. This is what we know and this is what we don't know. And I'm okay with not knowing. So go ahead, Elder.
Oh, let's go. Like,
were you done?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Well, I was just going to say, like you were saying, there are some things that are very clear and that are just, it's there. That's the answer. There's no debating that. Other things, not so much. And I just wanted to also add, like, you really do, when you get that, you're at the maturity when you're able to just properly, rightly understand the Torah without putting your emotions and feelings into it. Like, even when, for instance, just going back to the meat and the vegetables things, you could be not eating meat, but someone may come to you and say, hey, so-and-so, so-and-so, and you're like, well, this is what the word says. You may not even mention what you do, but you're able to just say, well, this is what the word says, and leave it at that.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good maturity level to be at. Not even really talking about what you're doing. I mean, if they ask, okay, I can expound on that, but this is what the word says. I'm giving you this information, and then, down the road, you may talk about stuff that you may, but
Absolutely.
I think that's really the key where we all just need to be at, just minusing our emotions and our feelings, and just, this is what the word says, and leave it at that.
Absolutely. That's when you know you're doing it right and you represent the Father's word for the Father's sake and not your own, right? When it might be that I might come across somebody who is they say, hey, yo, the Rock is telling me that I need to be vegan. How do you feel about that, right? And then every time that I'm around that individual, knowing that they're vegan for the sake of my brother and not causing a stumbling block, the only thing I'm ever eating around them is vegetables. They might not even know that I eat meat until they find out, because I'm dealing with them specifically with what their thing is and what the Father is leading. And I want to make sure that I'm representing the Father as best as possible, right? So if it's expedient for you and you're saying, hey, no, the Father, he came to me and he has placed it on my heart that I need to cut meat out, am I hearing from the Father? And I'm going to tell you in that moment and say, no, if you saying you heard his voice, you need to listen to that, right? I'm not going to make it about me and my personal belief about can we eat meat or not? Like, no, that's not what my job is to do in that scenario. But if you're asking about what the Torah says, right, then that's what my job is to do, right? So it's just a matter of properly representing the Father and doing what the Father is calling us to do, and not necessarily just looking for the word to justify our own personal opinions. Before you do, you got something, Elder?
Yeah, I did. One thing I would stress to anyone, I can only tell you what I know and what I understand and know, right? And if I'm trying to explain something to you, I'm going to explain something from you that I know that can be found in the Torah. Now, if you're seeking information outside of that, then my response to you would be like, well, leave the what's this thing called? Some of the quotes that you was made from the Talmud.
Talmud, okay.
I would tell you straight out, leave the Talmud alone.
Yeah.
This is what I do know.
Yeah.
Leave the Talmud alone.
Yeah.
That is, I don't care. I'm telling you, leave this alone.
It's gonna have you confused now.
Right. I'm only gonna tell you what I know. Right. And I know that you don't need to be reading the Talmud. You don't. Because you don't have any understanding of what you're trying to read now, let alone going to another book, a Talmud that was written by some people that had no knowledge or understanding of Yah. So, if I'm going to tell you anything, I'm going to tell you what I know. Leave the Talmud alone.
Yeah, that's wisdom there,
exactly.
Elder. That's wisdom there.
And you can go and read anything, but leave the Talmud alone.
Yeah, all praises. Yeah, if you don't have no foundation, definitely it's going to confuse you. Because 99.9% of the conversation that's going on in the Talmud, in my honest opinion, based off of my readings of it, is meaningless. But I always like to go to it to show, differences in point of view, because what we seeing nowadays, especially when we're talking about in the Hebrew walk, is more Hebrews that are now starting to use that. And that's becoming part of Hebrew doctrine, and then it's people that don't know that that's where this is coming from, and then they taking and absorbing that. You know what I mean? Yeah, your foundation might be off a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, to what we should or shouldn't be doing. Yeah, all praise. Yeah. All praise.
I think a lot of people. I won't say a lot of people. Some people use the Talmud for historical references and stuff like that, especially if they're within academia. So, don't take it as people are using the Talmud as doctrine. Some do. Some do, sure. But not everybody. Some people may just use it just for historical references or whatnot, just showing you the arguments and things that happened back then, because these things are oral and they became written down at some point. So it's not like they're just using it as doctrine. But the only reason why I grabbed the mic is because what you were talking about as far as the meat eater and the vegetarian. So I was going to go to Romans 14, but I ain't necessarily got to read it out. It was touching on what you were talking about.
All praises. Let me also preface the conversation. I don't want it to be misunderstood why I explained and why I went through all of the things that I went through the way that I did in this lesson, right? My point, like I said, and my focus is again, asking that question, how faithful am I to what the word says? And then now, what are my limitations? What the word presents itself to, right? That's what my goal and my focus of this is for us to learn how to be disciplined when we're dealing with the text and when we're sharing what we know of the text with others, right? And how to be disciplined even when we start to deal with people that might have differing understandings, right? I need to be able to identify and pinpoint when I'm talking to someone else, to be able to find that need, to feel the need to say, okay, no, where is this person getting this from? Because if it's not written, what's fueling this belief, right? Where is this coming from? I got to be able to deal with that so that I can hopefully shine a light and properly represent the Father as best as I can in those scenarios and situations, right? So that's really what the goal of it is. I want to clarify, because we might have vegans that are out there and that might hold that position, and I by no means am trying to be offensive or anything like that to that decision. If that is the decision that you have made and you're saying, hey, I feel like the Most High is leading me to abstain from meats, I'm saying my personal opinion on it is, listen to what you say, whatever it is that the Father is leading you to do personally, do that. But just be aware that this is not something that you can put on another person and justify it in Torah, with Torah. That's all that I'm saying, right?
Oh, okay, so now I got to read it. I got to read it now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read Romans 14, J.B. Phillips' New Testament.
Okay.
All right. J.B. Phillips. So it says, don't criticize each other's convictions. Verse 1, welcome a man whose faith is weak, but not with the idea of arguing over his scruples. One man believes that he may eat anything. Another man without this strong conviction is a vegetarian. The meat eater should not despise the vegetarian, nor should the vegetarian condemn the meat eater. They should reflect that God has accepted them both. After all, who are you to criticize?
Right there, say that last part. They should accept that Elohim has done what?
Accepted both of them.
So that tells us right there that this is not a matter of sin, right? Both,
there you go.
Whether you are saying, hey, I am only going to eat vegetables, that's not a sin no more than saying, hey, I'm going to only eat meat, right? Elohim accepts both, because in both of those scenarios, it's permissible in his word. So go ahead.
After all, who are you to criticize the servant of somebody else, especially when that somebody else is God? So, yeah, I wanted to read that because that played like right in, and that's a beautiful thing, because like you just said, if both are accepted, then yeah, you being a vegetarian, it's fine. If you eat meat, clean meat, it's fine.
And for the sake of one another, don't be a stumbling block. If you know that's not, but like I said, we can deal with that part of it once we understand that this is not a matter of sin, right? Once we understand that, then we can say, okay, so this is I can now look at you as an individual and learn how to love you as my brother, right? How can I appropriately move in this scenario, right? And again, like I said, we dealing with some light matters now, but at some point we're gonna have to start dealing with some of these more controversial topics, and we're laying a foundation for how to deal with those things. And it's especially important when we're talking about dealing with other individuals that might not necessarily believe or feel the same way that we do. Now, again, we're not talking about known knowns, right? We're not talking about that. I cannot look at my brother that is saying, hey, I am a believer in the covenant of Elohim, right? Now, once you said I do, and I understand what this law is saying, that if you pull up with the pork chop, I got to be like, now I'm going to hold my brother accountable. Hold on, wait a minute, bruh. Right. You know we're not supposed to be doing this, right? That's a known, right? But an individual that has not said this I do, I'm gonna look at you and, hey, you eat your pork, and I just need you to know that I can't eat that, right? So now we learn how to navigate that, right? And now it's just a matter of love. Okay, well, I understand you are a quote unquote Christian, you still eat pork. I don't, and here's my reasons for not. But I have to be able to properly identify exactly what your limitations are with the word and what my foundation is with the word, so that we can open up that discourse and that dialogue from that point forward. And who knows, maybe through love and me showing love, and especially if I listen long enough, I might lend my ear to you long enough that you might in turn respect me enough to lend your ear to me. And now we can have this conversation and we can build. And then maybe, just maybe, I don't know, just maybe, I might win the heart of my brother. Right? And now who can put a price on a soul, right? This is now a soul that's been added to the kingdom, because there's a lot of us that have a zeal for Elohim, but it is not according to knowledge, right? And we know that we're destroyed for a lack of it, right? So, but again, all of that goes into kingdom principle and not the principle of building a religion. If I'm only looking at building a religion and I'm only looking for people to agree and do things the way that I do it, and anybody else outside of that, hey, you go, right? But if I'm looking at building the kingdom, then I'm going to say, okay, so let me find out where you at. Why are you saying that? Okay. And now I got to start looking at hearts, right? To the best of my ability.
That's right.
Look and see, okay, is this, you really saying this out of ignorance, or are you saying this because you just want to do what you want to do? If you just want to do what you want to do, hey, I'm with Elder. Ain't no point in me even having this conversation. I'm going to go on and not even waste my time. I got to go,
Like
right? But if it's ignorance and it's just you got a zeal, oh, you zealous, but you just don't know no better, then now I can reason with you and let me try to put you up on some game and build your understanding up, right? So it's two completely different things, but yeah.
No, like that video, like the guys we were talking about earlier, the Israelite group, supposedly, let me say that, who was out there, cooking all the pork and the shrimp and lobster and all that crazy stuff. But yeah, I think that's a good point, because you don't want to push nobody away from the Most High. They eat pork. I mean, we have our understanding. That person have his understanding. That don't mean that you can't love that person and walk with them. You know what I'm saying?
Don't eat with them. Don't eat that pork. But,
yeah, you know what I'm saying?
But you can love it. Yeah, reason with them. Yeah, reason with them.
Reason with them.
Love on
You know
them and do it. Just be right. All right.
Kind. You know what I'm saying? Because what if you don't? Now that creates a problem. You know what I'm saying? And they might not ever lend the ear to you again.
Absolutely. And boy, I can tell you, and I've been there. You know what I mean? I've been on both sides of that. That's why I can speak on it. Like, I've been on the side where, I'm like, that's right, and I'm about to precept you to death, and I'm gonna stand up for what the Father done said, not realizing that, no, first and foremost, I done just precepted you and beat you with this book. And instead of letting the words distill as the dew and a bruised reed, not crushing it, and dealing with you for where you are, I done just beat you all up, and you didn't even understand the first point. So now it's like, I'm just crazy, right? And anything that cult is that you in is crazy. I don't want no parts of that.
Right.
And then I've also seen the fruit and the reward of when you deal with people out of love and genuine care for their soul. Right. And when you take the time to just put them up when the opportunity presents itself according to the guidance of the Ruach, that hearts can truly change. And the next thing you know, they putting you up on game and saying, hey, yo, look, this is what I read. I read this, or I found this out, or hey, yo, no, this, that. And they just as, 10 toes down in this walk. Okay. You know what I mean? So I've seen it both ways. And I can tell you that the fruit of actually leading with love is much better than when we just lead with doctrine. It's much better when we lead. The
conversation lasts a whole lot longer versus when you're arguing. You know what I'm saying? If you go beat somebody down over a pork chop, you think they're gonna listen to you about talking about Shabbat?
Now, like I said, it's much different. It's much different if I'm talking to somebody that I've been, one of my brothers in arms, one of my ox that is done went astray. That's a completely different thing. Nah. I'm gonna call you on that, right? And I hope you do the same for me. If you see me going astray and I'm off on some others, because we know what we believe, right? But when I'm talking to somebody that is not a member of this belief or of this covenant, it's about winning the soul and gaining the soul, and we do that through love and kindness. You know what I mean? So. They're gonna choke every time. They're gonna choke every time. So yeah, all praises. I didn't hear you. All praises. So, so yeah. With that being said, y'all, this is all that I have for today. Like I said, if you don't take anything else, just understand how to be responsible with the text, and just remember and try to the best of your ability to accept the text as it is and form your beliefs based off of that, right? Know what the limitations of the text are, and sometimes at the end of the day, it's okay to say, this is what I do know, and this is what I don't know. I can tell you what I do know, right? It's all right to do that. Like, where I'm from, they say, you ain't got a lot of kicking. You know what I mean? Like, you ain't got to do that. So, that's all I'm going to say on that. Yeah, for sure. And then that's the other element of it that we don't often think about, is that for all of us, there are consequences for everything that we do or don't do. You know what I mean? And especially if we are misleading someone, if we're a blind guide or we're misleading someone, for a lack of due diligence or because something is just not right in our hearts to begin with, then that's problematic. Right. And now that it does not say that we're not going to all grow in belief, and that we might say we might be doing something this way today, and then we might come to a greater level of understanding. And then at that point we say, oh, sorry, y'all, this is what we understood. But then now in light of new revelation, we got to stop doing it this way, y'all, because now we understand more, we understand better. That's just part of the growth process, and that happens, right? The issue is just that, if we come to that new knowledge and then we, for the sake of our own personal belief, we don't make the change. That's the only time where it's a problem. You know what I mean? So that's it. Hey, we was wrong on that. Yeah, So, yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So, yeah. All day, every day. That's righteous. It's a righteous thing. It's righteous. So yeah, and then furthermore, like I said, how we deal with one another when we do come across these things that are different. How are we? Are we just gonna be swayed because somebody said, "Hey, well, the original intent is this," and now we following this doctrine, or are we gonna actually be responsible with the text and say, "Well, but it is also written." So I understand what you're saying, and if that's your point of view, I'm gonna respect your point of view. But that's not the perspective or the point of view that I'm on, and that's no problem. Like I said, we were having a conversation earlier, and the purpose for us right now in this particular point in time, right? We have not reached Jeremiah 31, where it's talking about the Ruach is gonna be poured out on all of us, and no longer will we have to teach one another and say, hey, this is the right way and this is the wrong way. We won't have to do that anymore. Hey, until that time comes, we still teaching and learning, right? And we still got to have conversation with one another, and there's going to be many different points of view and every understandings and everything else, right? So our goal at this point is, hey, do your best, do the best that you can to hold it down until Mashiach comes back, right? When he returns, man, everything that we don't know, he gonna make sure that he let us know he gonna get us right, and he gonna get us tight, right? Until then, do the best that you can to properly represent him and hold it down until then. You know what I mean? Every word that proceeds from the mouth of Elohim. So, yeah. With that being said, like I said, I'm told me out. I'm done. I have been blessed to be here today. Like I said, if it's a story for another time, the testimony of the past few weeks for me. So, yeah, I'm blessed to be here. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to study in the Word with everybody that's here, everybody that's online. Yeah, we'll like I said, we'll talk about it and the lessons learned in the process. But until then, like I said, it's just been a blessing to be here with everybody. Like for real. I will give you Oh my, yeah, no, I ain't trying to do all that. But what I will say is this: when I say I'm grateful and I understand how the blessing of really like being alive, and like the fact that through the Father's mercy, you get he'll preserve you, protect you, and give you another opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, I just, all I'm gonna say is that I value it. I could be dead right now. I ain't. Like, and that's not no just cliche statement. I literally can say that, hey, I looked and I could be dead right now, and I ain't. So that right there is all the reason for me that I'm grateful and I'm thankful. You know what I mean? So yeah, all praises. Announcements, anything that we missing? All praises. So those that are looking to be with the ministry, with the music ministry, right? Expect that Brian will be reaching out, trying to, assemble Voltron, and we'll figure out, we'll figure things out from there. But just expect it. And if the calling is on you, just be obedient to it, listen to it, walk in confidence, walk in faith, and let the Father take care of the rest, right? So, yeah, all praises. Like, that right there is, yeah, all praises. Yeah, if that's it, yeah, a shalom to everybody online. We love y'all. Hopefully, some of y'all I'm hoping to see in here next week. But all praises. What I'm saying is, it's been a few weeks. I miss y'all. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. So yeah, all praises. So with that, if there's nothing else, we told me out. We told me out. All right. All praises. Baruch atah Yahuwah Eloheinu melech haolam. Todah Rabah Ab Yahuwah. We give you so much thanks, honor, esteem, praise, because you're worthy, Father. We thank you, Father, for the hedge of protection that you place around us. We thank you for your loving kindness, your mercy, your compassion that endures forever. We thank you, Father, for giving us another Shabbat, another opportunity to fellowship, to love on one another, to see one another, to to study with one another, to dig into your word and just learn how we can be better stewards over your word, better shepherds over others, and just how we can properly represent you as you would have it to be done. We ask, Father, that you will continue to mature us, develop us in our understanding of you and your ways, our representation of you, and not just on the Shabbat, but on each day of our lives. We give you thanks, honor, and esteem, Father, for just waking us. That there is enough for us to be able to just give you all the praise, honor, and esteem. We thank you, Abba. With that being said, we pray that you continue to place your hedge of protection around all of our households, continue to provide our needs. You know what they are, and you see things before they even happen. You know what is needful to everybody that is called yours. So we continue that you will continue to allow things to work for our good, and sometimes even in cases where we don't see what that good is in that immediate. Right? So we just give you all thanks, honor, and esteem. In the name of Yahushua Mashiach, Hallel to you, Yahuwah. Todah, Father. Let it be so.